presented by the Strong Blue Line Foundation and powered by Moose Ridge Coffee in Snake River Landing, Idaho Falls. Welcome to the podcast, where former San Antonio police officer, author, and pastor Tim Rupp walks you through real-life scenarios involving our police officers and digs into the depths of facts and opinions on each case. This is Cop Talk, and it starts now.
Well, hello and welcome to Cop Talk, the radio show and podcast of the Strong Blue Line. I'm Tim Rupp, and with me is the operations manager for the Rev.FM, the one and only Mr. Gary Oss. Hello, Gary.
Hey, Tim Rupp.
Hey, it's good. It's great. It's good to be back in studio.
Now, nice to have you back.
We got back a couple weeks ago. These shows are pre-recorded. I hate to bust your bubble, but they're pre-recorded. But it's great to be back in studio.
Yeah, and you've had quite the trip.
It was. We had a pretty good trip. Good and challenging in some areas, but overall, really, really positive. It was a good trip.
That is great. Lots of lives touched.
Mostly
law enforcement.
Yeah, mostly law enforcement. We had eight seminars in like four different states: Colorado, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico.
Wow.
9,200 miles. We also made a trip out to Georgia, and I mentioned that earlier. Mm-hmm. And so we went and we gave copies of Winning Gunfight to 20-some brand new U.S. Forest Service officers out there.
That is so great.
So, yeah, a lot of things.
That is really, really cool. I'd love to hear more about your trip.
Well, before we talk about that, let's get to our Officer Down Memorial page. We'll honor those, and then we'll talk about that trip. And then I got something a little bit kind of neat that I would like to talk about, if we have time.
Let's do it.
Anyway, so Officer Down Memorial page, honoring officers who were killed in the line of duty on this date in history. And Gary, I have Deputy U.S. Marshal Jacob G. Owens. And end of watch Tuesday, April 16th, 1872.
Wow.
Deputy Marshal Jacob Owens and 7 other deputy marshals were shot and killed as he and a group of 10 marshals attempted to arrest a man for murdering a married couple. Now, this caught my attention immediately, Gary, because I've even written in my books that the first time 4 or more law enforcement officers, American law enforcement officers, were killed in the line of duty was in 1970. 100 years after, almost 100 years after this. And I didn't know about this event, and I'm not sure how it wasn't counted. And perhaps it wasn't counted because a lot of the deputies killed in this, we're going to talk about this a little bit later if we have time. That's why it's kind of neat to talk about. Mm-hmm. But they were posse members.
Okay.
So they were just deputized on the spot. So I'm not really sure how that works. But they are listed. All of them are listed on the Officer Down Memorial page. So I found out that. It says the suspect was being tried in an Indian court since he murdered a woman who was Indian. As the deputies approached the courthouse, which was being held at a schoolhouse, several Indians exited and opened fire, killing 8 marshals. And the incident was named the Going Snake Massacre. Going Snake is the area that it was in, so the Going Snake Massacre. But I did some research on this, and I looked it up, and I've got some more accurate information. So
perfect.
We have time today. We're gonna talk about that. It's very, very interesting.
That is cool.
But anyways, Deputy Marshal Jacob Owens, but we're going to also name several more that were killed in that same incident.
Okay.
But who do you have, Gary?
This is Deputy Sheriff Fred Fissler, Hendricks County Sheriff's Office out of Indiana. End of watch on Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. So just a year ago. But Deputy Sheriff Fred Fissler was electrocuted when he came in contact with live wires while investigating a crash scene. And while on the scene, witnesses noticed Deputy Fissler on the ground near the power lines and used his radio for help. Deputy Fissler was transported to the hospital and didn't survive. He was a United States Marine Corps veteran. He had served with the Hendricks County Sheriff's Office for over 2.5 years and survived by his wife and 2 young children. So very young, 28 years old. short tour, 2 years, 5 months.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and a military veteran. And we hear about that all the time. If you have an accident scene, you look. You look for down power line poles. We always told, be careful. If you see a down power line pole, if your car hits it, don't get out of the car. Stay in your car. It's grounded because of the rubber tires and things like that. You don't think about that, but it happens.
Yeah.
And the officer was, they're just investigating and somehow come across and was electrocuted. Wow.
That's very sad.
Yeah, It is. Terrible. Anyways, before we get back to this Marshall Jacobs story and the Going Snake Massacre, you asked about what we did on our trip and how it went. And it went very well, Gary. Like I said, our first stop, we left here the first part of January, stopped in Colorado, just outside of Denver, and we did a seminar there. Thornton Police Department hosted us.
Okay.
Thornton, Colorado. So it's just outside of Denver. We had officers there from about 4 or 5 different agencies. So it was a good seminar. Our first one we did on this trip was a winning a gunfight seminar, and we was there for a little bit. Went from there, went down to Arkansas where we have a rental property that's kind of our home base, and so we rent this out on Airbnb when we're not there.
Okay.
And so we got this thing, and the Lord's opened up doors so we can go down there and spend some time in the South when the travel's better.
Yeah.
Although some of the travel wasn't so good. We go down there, Gary, was there for just a short time. Then we went over to Georgia for my son-in-law's graduation in Georgia.
That's right.
In Glencoe. And we hit snow in Georgia. It was crazy. That's when Florida got snow and all that,
right.
all along the coast,
DC,
all that.
Yeah.
Lafayette and Louisiana, all these places got dumped with snow. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we get out of Idaho and get dumped in snow.
Right, you brought Idaho with you.
They had to reschedule his graduation, so we weren't able to attend.
Oh.
Our daughter, his wife, went with us, and she wasn't able to attend. She's going to pin his badge on, and she couldn't do it. So, but anyways, he's graduated. They're in North Carolina now. And anyways, we came back from that, and we had seminars in Arkansas. We had 2 or 3 seminars in Arkansas. Went down to Louisiana, had some short trips in Louisiana, did some seminars there. We went to down to Slidell, Louisiana, which is St. Tammany's Parish. It's just outside of New Orleans.
Okay.
So probably about 30 miles from downtown New Orleans is where this is at. And we did it at St. Tammany's Parish. That was the agency that hosted us there, and it was a very positive seminar. And we had another seminar that the next day in the area. But I want to focus on St. Tammany's Parish. Some friends of ours, I was telling you earlier, some friends of ours that were missionaries in China are now banned from going back to China because of all the stuff that's going on. They've been identified with churches there that have been raided by the government, and so they can't go back to China. But they're here in the United States. They still have that heart for missions, and they're helping us out. Now, they're not law enforcement at all. They're not law enforcement, but they're helping us out to be able to serve. And he was able to set up this seminar in St. Tammany's Parish. He was able to do all that. So,
very cool.
So he did it for us. That was work that I didn't have to do. Sherry and I didn't have to do that. He did it. But when we were there, we gave the seminar there on a Friday. The next day on a Saturday, one of the St. Tammany Parish's officers was killed in the line of duty.
Oh.
It was a car accident. Well, it wasn't a car accident. It was a vehicular assault.
Oh, okay.
These juveniles were running from another deputy who was pursuing them, and the sergeant was putting out spike strips on the highway just north of New Orleans as they were leaving town. St. Tammany Parish, they were leaving that parish, and they ran him over. And they continued on, and New Orleans officers 18 miles down the road stopped him. But he was killed. And what this really hit hard, Gary, was our friends that are doing this, we tell them about it. And we always hear about police officers, dangerous job and stuff. But when we go there and we do something and there's a death of an officer in an agency that you were just there, just talking. He wasn't in our seminar, but half the people in our seminar were his peers and his coworkers.
Yeah.
And so that really hit home the urgency of doing these seminars and getting it to these officers. So we had that, and then we had some more time in Arkansas, and then we left Mena, Arkansas, and we made Amarillo by evening. You thought I was going to say morning, didn't you? Yeah, we made Amarillo by evening, and we left Amarillo in the morning, and we were on our way to New Mexico, and we're going down the highway, I-40, I think it is, and it was pretty crowded with traffic. I mean, not real crowded, not like a downtown Dallas or anything like that, but it was a lot of traffic for a highway going 80 miles an hour. Speed limit was 75 or 80 miles an hour, and lo and behold, an antelope on the middle of the highway running right at me, Gary.
Wow.
Unbelievable. I'm pulling a trailer, driving a truck, pulling a trailer, and I'm able to just go to the left just a bit, and he goes to his left or she goes to her left and went right by the truck, missed us. I think the truck behind us took the animal out. I'm not sure. I saw them pull over, but I don't think anyone was injured in it, because traffic, I'm going 80 miles an hour. You can't slam on your brakes.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
if you do, you're gonna jackknife. You're gonna get rear-ended. If you swerve, I may jackknife. Go off the road and roll. That's one of the things that I learned a long time ago. Back when I was in the military, a friend of mine, I was just a young man, 20 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old, and he just bought this Jeep Scrambler. Remember when the Jeep Scramblers came out?
Yeah.
They were like trucks, Jeep trucks. He just got this brand new Scrambler, and he went on a vacation, he and his wife, and he came back like 3 days after he left, like, what are you back so early for? They were on their way going across West Texas, and a rabbit came out in the road. And his wife was driving, and she swerved to hit it and rolled the Jeep.
Oh, wow.
They were both okay. They were both okay. And I asked him, how's the rabbit? He didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
But what I learned from that, as a driver, if something comes out in front of me, if I don't have a way of escape, I'm going to take the animal out. You got to.
Exactly.
That's the safest thing to do for a human life and stuff. So just be careful. There's so many people get killed because they swerve radically and roll their vehicle. Yeah. And so you got to be careful. It's better just to, if you're going to hit it, if you can slow down, maximum braking, go into a straight, slow down, hit the animal, and hopefully it won't kill anybody.
Right.
But swerving and stuff is very, very dangerous. So.
It really is, especially when you've got other traffic like you were describing.
When you have other traffic, there was not an option. I took my foot off the accelerator, but I didn't hit the brakes. I just couldn't.
I'm glad you guys are safe.
Yeah. So we got to New Mexico, and that was a fantastic one. We put it out for law enforcement. Went in gunfight for law enforcement officers, and over half the class were chaplains. They were hungry to come, and it was a fantastic class. It really was. We had great participation. I've told other people, Gary, sometimes you go there, officers are tough to talk to. And sometimes you go there and they all got like, every one of them's got a chip on their shoulder, like, okay. Yeah. And Sherry would tell me, she goes, Tim, how do you do it? How do you talk to these guys? I said, because I know them. I was there. They got this chip on their shoulder attitude, and sometimes you get a class with all of them like that. But their heart's on that, Yeah. You can speak through that. You just have to do it. And, you don't know whether the Lord's going to work in their heart afterwards. But it's always easier to minister to people who are receptive. Yeah. If it was, if ministering and witnessing was easy and fun all the time, we'd all do it. The Lord wouldn't have to command us to do it. He commanded us to do it, and you're going to endure trials, and you're going to go through things. People's going to. I was talking to somebody here the other day in church, and they said, I was talking, and I was witnessing to people, but I was persecuted. I said, you were persecuted. How were you persecuted? Well, they didn't like what I was saying, and they said some things about me on social media. That, my friend, is not persecution.
Right.
That's being annoyed. That's, I tell you about my friends in China. They were ran out of China. They know people personally who disappeared. Yeah. The Chinese government, they disappeared. They think they're probably dead. That's persecution. When the government comes in and arrests the leaders of a church and makes arrests and hauls them off to concentration camps in China.
Mm-hmm. Right, because
that's persecution.
No religion.
Yeah. So we get people prosecute us, but they don't persecute us.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully, Lord willing, it won't come to that in America.
Yeah.
So we're blessed to be here. So we've got the freedom of speech, so we need to use it and to share the gospel when and where we can.
Yeah. So when you talk about a parish, that's what
a
they
county.
refer to. That's
okay,
a county.
That's one thing. I was corrected. I was down there, and I always try to say parish, but I was down there. I said, I went to the county SO, and one of the guys said parish. I said, I know. We have parishes here. I said, yes, I know. If I don't get it right, I will perish. But they're parishes, and that's the Catholic Church influence.
Right.
That's because they're divided up in parishes.
Yeah.
And so
that's the southern.
So that's Louisiana.
Yeah.
Louisiana is different. But I tell you what, and Sherry will tell you, if you ask Sherry, who are the friendliest people, what state, she'll say Louisiana. Huh. They just are so friendly. And she told that to one officer, and he just kind of smiled and said, yeah. And I said, yeah, but she's not a police officer either. He goes, no, she's not. So it's like, but they're friendly people. But that tells you something about policing.
Yeah. Because
we say, oh, they're so friendly here. And the police officers, no, man, you don't know what my job is.
Yeah.
I deal with people that aren't friendly. If they were all friendly, I would be out of a job.
Yeah.
So, but to be honest, I mean, they're very, very friendly, very good food along the way.
Very cool.
We hit New Mexico, and I mean, we tried to find some place to eat. Every place, the Mexican food everywhere. Yeah, so we had Mexican food all the time. And when we were in Louisiana, we ate the seafood. So we had good food. I put on a couple pounds, trying to work that off.
Well, that's really cool. Another note that I want to mention is, it's such a blessing. One, that you're heading the strong blue line, because you'd mentioned that a lot of officers have, chips on their shoulders.
Right.
And it doesn't make them bad officers or bad people.
No.
But that's sometimes just their job. It's just, it makes you jaded, and I just think that the officers need it so bad. Luckily you're there. Yeah,
you're exactly right, Gary, because our police officers, we call them the finest, New York's finest, LA's finest, or whatever. We say the finest. Well, if they're the finest among us, and we see that sometimes they're bad people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do things wrong, and they get jaded, they got attitudes and stuff.
Right.
If they're the finest, what's that tell you about the rest of us?
Yeah.
Exactly. And another thing is they are just, and as we're on a Christian radio, and the Strong Blue Line is, we know it's a Christian, it's a 501c3 charity, but we have a message. We are taking the hope of the gospel to them. That's the underlying thing. We are taking hope to these officers. And as Christians, oftentimes we expect non-Christians to act like Christians when Christians don't even act like Christians.
Right.
And so why should we expect that? So don't, we're all sinners, and we're saved by grace. Those of us who have trusted the Lord as our Savior, we're Christians, we're saved by grace. Paul said himself, he's the worst of all sinners, but, by the grace of God, I am what I am, and it's by God's grace we are, and we just need to make sure that we deal with people. If you're out there, you're out there in the world. You've got a job, a secular job. That means you don't work here in the church. But even here in a church environment, we come in contact with people who are non-believers all the time.
Right.
And so we don't work with. Hopefully, we don't work with them. But even as working environment here with Christians, we can rub each other the wrong way a little bit. It's not all, this isn't heaven.
Right.
Water Springs is a great work environment. I love working here. It's a great deal, but this isn't heaven.
No.
We're all sinners.
Yep.
And, but when I guess the point I'm trying to make is when we're out in the world, don't expect the unsaved to act like the saved are supposed to act. Let's just concentrate on how we'll respond. Let's look in the mirror. Take the log out of our own eyes first.
That's right.
And not to say that, now it's not saying, well, the Bible doesn't tell us to judge. No, the Bible doesn't tell us to judge. God says, take it out first, and then you can see and help your brother. Because, and what you're being judged by, judge everybody. And what's the judgment? Obviously, the Lord is the ultimate judgment, but the standard is the Bible. Mm-hmm. And so that's what our standard, and that's our standard. That's everybody's standard. That's what we're to compare by. But the bottom line, Gary, is we're gonna come across people in our own families that's like, oh, Uncle so and so, or right. Aunt so and so. You know what problem with she's got? You know what? Yeah, we all got problems.
We all do.
We all have problems. Yeah. Every one of us have problems, and we become. I mean, look at we were talking in a couple weeks ago in morning devotions. We were going over Luke chapter. What was it? Chapter 11, I think.
Yeah.
Luke 11 or something like that, 11 or 13, I can't remember. Anyways, we were talking about it, but Jesus was talking about those, strive to go in the narrow gate. Go in the narrow
13.
way. Many won't. Yeah, 13. And so we're going in that, and we're talking about all that. And then, it's like, and some say, Lord, you're not going to be here. You're not going to be here. And like, oh my goodness, what do I have to do to get there? Like, am I good enough? But then he mentions Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will be there. And you think, if them knuckleheads can make it, and it's not because of their good. I mean, Abraham, have you ever lost faith, Gary? Have you ever been lacking in faith?
Yeah.
Abraham's known for that.
Yeah.
The lacking of faith, not doing things, trying to do things his own way.
Mm-hmm.
But yet he trusted in the Lord. Mm-hmm. And that's his salvation. Then you have Isaac. And the same thing what he did, And then you have Jacob and the knucklehead things that Jacob did.
Yep.
But yet he put his faith and trust in the Lord. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're at. We need to put our faith and trust in the Lord and clean up our own lives and be witnesses for the Lord as he has called us to be witnesses. Mm-hmm. And are we going to be perfect witnesses? No. He didn't call us to be a perfect witness. He called us to be his witness.
Yep.
And, the Lord says, you are my witnesses. Mm-hmm. So if the Lord says, Gary, you are my witness, what does that make you?
A witness.
A witness. And you can either be a good witness or a bad witness, but you're a witness. Yeah. Either way. Yep. It's not like we have a choice. Well, I'm not going to be a witness. No, you're called to be witness. You are my witnesses.
Good or bad, you're still
good or bad,
a
you're a witness. So what kind of witness are you? A faithful witness or an unfaithful witness?
Right.
And so let's be a faithful witness, not be an unfaithful witness. And it's just so traveling around and doing things. I've talked to people and they're like, I talked to a guy, he said, Tim, you just need to retire and be done and just relax. And I look at it like, man, I can't. If I just completely retired and didn't do anything but what I wanted to do, go out riding motorcycles, go fishing or whatever, travel around, there's still something for the Lord has me to do.
Yeah.
Now, can I slow down as I get in my older years and slow down and enjoy things? Sure. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think we're given that. But I can't do things physically like I used to do when I was younger. Mm-hmm. We all, we just go through seasons in life.
Yeah.
And but there are things that I can do now that I couldn't do when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Because of life experiences. Yeah. And things I've learned over the years, and it's like, wow, And look at you, Gary, with the beard going down. It's like white beard, like the wise man.
The wise man.
you look like you ought to be like on what's that show? Kung Fu.
Oh, goodness.
The wise Gary Austin. What wisdom do you have me, Father Gary? Anyways, Gary.
So good to have you back in the studio.
It's good to be back.
Tim.
And guess what? We are out of time.
That went so fast.
And so we're going to talk about this next week.
Okay.
This Fort Smith deal. We'll spend time on that next week because I really want to get to it. It's really good. Hey, thanks for listening in. If you have a topic or question you want to address on Cop Talk, send me an email. You can email suggestions, questions, comments, or complaints to coptalk@therev.fm. That's coptalk@therev.fm. And remember, you can catch Dog Watch. Cop Talk. I've got Dog Watch on here still. You can catch Cop Talk. See, that's what I get for reading it. On Amazon, Google, Apple, and Spotify platforms. Thought from the good book today. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. Thanks for joining in and helping us to make the thin blue line a strong blue line.
Cop Talk is presented by the Strong Blue Line Foundation and sponsored by Moose Ridge Coffee in Snake River Landing, Idaho Falls. Questions and comments are always welcome by email to coptalk@therev.fm. Listen, follow, leave a review, and share this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or YouTube. And visit thestrongblueline.org to learn how you can be a supporter. Cop Talk is a Rev FM production, produced and edited by Gary Austin. Thank you for joining us on Cop Talk.